Alexander Volkanovski is in more danger than you think. A lot of MMA fans are rejoicing because Ilia Topuria has left 145 pounds, which means Volk's getting the belt back. It's a foregone conclusion. Diego Lopes is a step down from Ilia Topuria, and therefore, because Topuria was such a nightmare matchup and he already KO'd Volk, that means that we're in the clear. Wrong. This is not a fight where he can go out there and play tit for tat and, stand on the outside and have a 5-round points battle. This is a fight where Volkanovski cannot afford to make a mistake within the first couple of rounds. Otherwise, he is going to get sent to the Shadow Realm. I'm picking Volk to win this fight, but my point is in this video, he's going to need to grapple. Now, you might be saying, nope, bad idea. You can't grapple with Lopes. You can't grapple with Lopes. I disagree, all right? Volkanovski is a better grappler, and Volkanovski's grappling style is a nightmare for Diego Lopes. Now, some people are also going to say, what do you mean, man? Volkanovski's a better striker than Diego Lopes. What do you mean? He's the best striker in the sport, man. Of course he's going to be able to fucking stand and bang. He's going to be able to stand up with him and freaking tit for tat him. Well, they were saying the same thing when it came to the Yair Rodriguez fight. And guess what happened in the Yair Rodriguez fight? Exactly what I said. Alexander Volkanovski should not stand with Yair, even though he schooled Max Holloway. Oh, he schooled Max Holloway, therefore he'll be standing with Yair. No. Volk hardly threw any punches, bided his time very early, and just grappled. For the first couple of rounds, did hardly anything on the feet because it wasn't worth the risk, and him and his team were smart enough to understand that, and they just focused on controlling Yair and taking the wind out of his sails. And that is exactly what I think we are going to see in this fight. Diego Lopes, he is somebody that has been controlled on the ground, not only by Movsar Evloev, but also by Dan Ige. And if Dan Ige can control Diego Lopes, so can Volkanovski, and he's going to do it early, because if he doesn't, he may have his head knocked out into the bleachers. All right, because Diego Lopes, I'm going to say he's the second most dangerous fighter Volkanovski has ever fought. He's more dangerous than Max Holloway. Is he a better fighter than Max? No, not necessarily, but he's more dangerous, okay? He's more dangerous than Islam Makhachev. And wait a second. Whoa, wait a second. You can't say that, man. Early on, Diego Lopes, with his featherweight speed and his incredibly fast combinations where he fully trusts in them, is a nightmare for everybody. All right, if you watch this guy's fight with Brian Ortega and all these other guys that he's fought, when this guy is in the pocket with someone, if you're getting clipped by a Diego Lopes speedy combination where he's sitting down on his big meaty hooks, you are getting sent to the Shadow Realm. So right off the bat, I know Volkanovski, he's been saying, it ain't gonna happen.
I'm sorry, mate, that ain't happening.
And when Volkanovski says it ain't gonna happen, you could run up a mountain for this guy. You could jump to the moon for this guy. But he can't fight in the pocket. Straight up, I know some people are, hey man, Volkanovski can fight in the pocket with the best of them, man. He can grit down with JDM, man. No. So my point is, we're gonna need to see him grapple. And you got to understand that this is the case. You got to think that Volkanovski and his team are well aware about this fact. They're going to be watching tape on Lopes. They're going to see we can't fuck around on the feet with this guy early on, and we're better than him on the ground. Again, there's some people that for whatever reason, they see Diego Lopes throw up a triangle. Oh, all of a sudden he's better because it's a submission attempt. Submission attempts equals better grappler. Total bullshit. Volkanovski is the best in the world at controlling these jiu-jitsu experts off of their back. He just is. From the words of Dan Hardy himself.
He never allows himself to get drawn into a grappling match. Spreads his way over them without giving them anything that they can pull him into.
It's called hover maxing. And Alexander Volkanovski is the best hover maxer on the planet. Think what Khamzat was doing to Kevin Holland. Holland would be hitting Grammy rolls, and Khamzat just kept hovering. We constantly see Volkanovski take down these really good grapplers. and beat them up. It's not just that he holds them down, he takes them down, and they have no opportunity to throw anything up. It's because he's dense, he's got an ability to hover, he's got the build differentness. When he took down Yair Rodriguez, what was the first thing he did? He took him down to the center of the octagon, right? Center of the octagon is actually where people can do pretty well off of their back. If you put their head up against the fence and you sort of trap them in a corner, it's harder for them to maneuver. Volkanovski took Yair Rodriguez down, and he literally walked him over to the fence. That's like 7 feet away. He brought Yair over to the fence. So again, a lot of people forget Volkanovski sort of built different. Diego Lopes has all these tricks up his sleeve, and so did Yair, man. So did Yair. Remember Yair Rodriguez before the Volk fight? We saw what he did to Emmett, rolled him up, smoked him like a Bazooka Joe joint. And he was piecing him up on the ground. He had Emmett in his guard. He was fucking elbowing him and eventually submitted him and made him tap. None of that worked against Volk. Took him down, noogied him with his elbow on the ground, hover maxed, and just would not allow Yair to get anything off. We saw it against Brian Ortega. Outside of the first submission attempt, I think when Volkanovski got out of that, we saw him posture up, hover above Brian Ortega, and rain down a flurry of thudding ground and pound shots. And this is the thing about Volk, because he's like very short and stocky, when he's throwing ground and pound, like he basically stands up and he's only, he's still pretty close to you. And that's when he can really leverage, good punches. And, again, if you're looking at Diego Lopes, this guy tires out. This guy gasses out big time, big time. You watch the fight with Dan Ige. Full training camp, fair enough, Dan Ige had a little bit of a weight advantage, and early on, Diego Lopes looks like a world beater. He's imposing his will, he's piecing up Ige. It's, relatively competitive, but he looks fast, he's high output. Third round, this guy had his back glued against the fence. The entire third round, Diego Lopes, and Dan Ige's low output in the third round. He's not even got this super high output. He's not even operating on the same level as a Volkanovski, but nonetheless, he has Lopes back glued against the fence, basically like huffing and puffing, hoping and praying that a right hand every once in a while lands, and eventually they end up on the ground, and Ige beats him up in the last minute of the fight, and Lopes has nothing for him. If that's Volkanovski, and you have a 5-round fight, he's getting finished. He slows down. Brian Ortega, he was dropping Ortega all over the place, had him flopping on the deck like a fish. Third round, it's competitive. Him and Ortega are in there going tit for tat. And Ortega is a slow poke. He's not got the best defense. He's not got the best footwork. And he's certainly not got the best wrestling. So my point is, this is a fight where we're going to see Volkanovski take this fight to the ground. Things will be interesting early because Diego Lopes is going to have energy. It's not like he will not be able to put up a fight. He's strong, all right? He's going to be able to make things happen. Maybe he tries to, throw up a submission and maybe it gets kind of close, but Volkanovski gets out. But second round, he's going to be a little bit more tired. We're going to see the same thing. Third round, he's going to be gassed, and I think Volkanovski's going to finish him. So my prediction for this fight is going to be a third or fourth round TKO, maybe on the ground, maybe on the feet. Maybe he catches Lopes making a mistake on the feet, like he did to Yair with just the perfect punch that catches him when he's not expecting it. It rocks him. He follows up, TKOs him on the ground, something like that. I think that's what we're going to see. But again, early on, you're going to have to be biting your nails, all right? It's going to be nerve-wracking because this is not a guy where you can afford to get hit by, all right? And again, Volkanovski, if he goes in there with the same defense that he's had throughout his whole career, he's susceptible to getting hit with these clean shots. And I don't know if he can afford to get hit with those clean shots at this point in his career where he's been KO'd 2 times in a row. Hopefully the time off really makes a big difference. And also, can we expect the same Speedy Gonzalez Volk? Can we expect him to be as fast as he was even in the Topuria fight where he looked fast, right? It's been a year. Are we going to see a slightly smaller and, slower Volkanovski? When I say smaller, I mean he's just getting older. And Diego Lopes is a big guy in this division. He's big. He can impose his will. He's fast. So again, we're assuming that Volkanovski is the same guy with the same speed, the same reaction time, who's going to have an ability to hold people on the ground and be, that the built different tank in the division that can sort of just run through people in the grappling. Because after that Makhachev fight, we were like, man, if Volkanovski can wrestle with Makhachev, all these other featherweights are screwed. We're going to see when the rubber meets the road. We're going to figure it all out on the night of the fight. If Volkanovski comes in looking like the same guy that showed up to fight Ilya, the same guy that showed up to fight Yair, I think he should win this fight as long as he doesn't sit in the pocket and grit down with Diego Lopes. Okay? And again, I don't think he's going to do that. I don't think we're going to see Volk do that. And I actually think that in some way, even though the KOs aren't going to help his durability, certainly not going to help it, there's a chance that because of the KOs, again, we see a more reserved and more risk-averse Volkanovski, and that may not be the best. We may find out that actually if he's too patient, his game may not work anymore. But the point that I'm making is we could also see a Volkanovski that although he's taking less risks, although he's throwing less punches, he's actually in a way more dangerous because he'll wait for the right opportunities and he'll be able to capitalize big and checkmate his opponent. You know what I mean? Like he did to Yair. Wasn't throwing a whole lot of punches, wasn't really throwing a whole lot of output on the feet until the third round. And even in the third round, he was waiting for the right moment. And when he got it, it was over. We rarely see Volkanovski these days like just TKO people or rock someone badly on the feet. But we did in the Yair fight, and Yair was known for having a granite chin. So it was one of those situations where he caught him because it was a perfectly timed punch that Yair didn't see coming. So again, it could be the case that because he's more reserved, he's not showing as much of his, he's not showing his cards, so to say. He's not showing his hand, and, he could catch Diego Lopes by surprise. I personally would like to see Volkanovski go in here with a little bit more of a finishing mindset. Like, this is the thing. As I said, this is not a guy where you can just, tit for tat in the first couple of rounds and just have a nice kickboxing battle. Especially at this point, it's just not worth the risk. I'm not saying Volkanovski couldn't win a striking battle. I think he could. But it's just not worth the risk after 2 KO losses in a row. You know what I mean? Against a guy that hits this hard. Right? It's not the path of least resistance, which is what Volkanovski should be taking. But the point that I want to make is that I think he should sort of really try to look for a way to finish Diego Lopes and not just have it be like, I'm going to outclass him for 5 rounds. Hey, he could do it, but I'd be more comfortable if they're like, him and Joe Lopez and Aljo, they're all at the freaking chalkboard and they're planning it out. They're doing the X's and O's, and they find something. They find a chink in the armor. When Diego Lopes steps his back foot over here, maybe we could do this. That's what they should do. When he moves this way on the ground, that's when we're going to checkmate him. Submission. Get him with a submission. I actually just figured it out. He's training with Aljo. And he's, putting himself in these tough positions. And he's, he's putting himself in places no other fighter is willing to put themselves in, according to Volkanovski. And you see it. Aljo's taking his back, and he's neck cranking him, and you see Craig Jones is in there, and he's throwing up submissions. And Volkanovski's saying, you know what, I'm getting submitted, but at the end of this training camp, I ain't going to be getting submitted anymore. I'd rather be getting submitted in the gym than in the cage. Volkanovski, he might not be able to throw a triangle up because he's a bit stubby. But I think, and listen, I feel like a submission, man. I feel like a submission could be good. Maybe, do what Makhachev does. Take people down, hold them down, and wait for them to expose themselves. Wait for them, by trying to scramble up to the feet, they give up their back. And I'm not saying Volkanovski's going to rear naked choke Diego Lopes, but what I am saying is, man, try to hover max your way into getting Diego Lopes to put himself in an arm triangle. And I know that if anyone is good enough to not have any submissions in their entire UFC career and then like gun for one in a training camp and actually get it in a fight, it's someone like Volk, who's training the specifics with Craig Jones, from the Craig Jones arsenal, right? Take something out of the Craig Jones book, take something out of the Aljamain Sterling book, and sort of implement it to the stocky man game, which would be a head and arm triangle, right? It's like, it'd be a Kimura, one of those, a bulldog choke, right? It's not going to be one of these long rangey submissions, like, a flying triangle from bottom or something like that. Maybe not a rear naked choke, but honestly, man, I really think a submission from Volkanovski, that's something that's going to come out of left field that Diego Lopes may not expect. So again, I'm just going to say it. He's going to grapple early. I'm telling you, he should grapple early. And if this fight goes into the third round, Diego Lopes is going to come falling down with output. You're going to see his style. It has its issues because, again, when he doesn't have the power, he doesn't have the speed, it's a lot more simple and basic than even a guy like Yair, where even when Yair is tired, he still has 1,000 techniques, and he's still very fast because that's his bread and butter. Third round, we could see Alexander Volkanovski pressing Diego Lopes up against the fence. Diego Lopes glued up against the fence, just hoping and praying for a right hand. When we see that, we're going to know that the belt's coming back. All right, we're going to know that the belt's coming back. Or if we see Volkanovski shoot a takedown early and get Diego Lopes down, we're going to know we're off to a good start. So let me know what you guys think. Do you agree? Do you think that actually it's going to be the right move to grapple with this guy? Even though he's got good grappling again, so did Brian Ortega. Yet Volkanovski 10-8'd him in 2 rounds back-to-back after he got out of the submission. Right? The submission attempt. Almost finished him. And then in the 4th round, it was the same thing. Almost finished him at the end of the 4th, where Ortega couldn't even get up on his own to stand up on a stool. Apparently, if you can't get up on your own, they should call a TKO. So that could have been stopped. Islam Makhachev, best grappler in the sport, had a whole minute where he was getting beat up against Alexander Volkanovski. And I don't want to hear anyone saying, well, he just chose to be in that position because they knew the fight was going to end. It's a whole minute. I think we are going to see a grappling masterclass. It's going to be a patient Volk, waiting for the right opportunities, biding his time like the Yair fight. First minute, doing a whole lot of nothing, just switching stances, making them show their hand. Then we're going to see the takedown. He's going to get the control. I think we're going to see a masterclass. But you should be nervous for this fight. This is a nerve-wracking fight. It's a nail-biter. It is. Early on, make no mistake, Diego Lopes is as dangerous as it gets. I think he's a more dangerous Oliveira in the first couple of rounds. Now, Oliveira at 155, very dangerous. Oliveira is better on the ground, but on the feet, Diego Lopes has more pound-for-pound power. So when I say he's more dangerous, I mean like the chances of a Lopes knocking you out in the first round is higher than like an Oliveira knocking you out. And they're very similar fighters. So we'll see what happens. If Volkanovski wins this fight, I know that I said this would be one of the most impressive wins ever because no one has ever won a belt at the age of 35 or older in the lighter weight classes. So that would be really cool. And some people say to that, well, technically Volk isn't really the champion and whatnot. Okay, whatever. Still impressive, but beating Diego Lopes is as good as anyone else's title defenses against Diego Lopes. Diego Lopes is a good win. He's been dominating everybody since his fight with Movsar-Evloev, and even that was pretty competitive. This is a guy that in his own right has potential to be a champion and defend that belt a few times. And I actually would consider picking Lopes to beat Evloev. But my point is, if Volkanovski gets this win, this is a modern era title defense against somebody that is more dangerous than Ortega. Maybe not as good as Max, but more dangerous than Max. I mean, this is a really tricky fight, and this is a modern era, as good as it gets title defense. Diego Lopes is one of those fighters where if anyone fights him, it's not like, oh, this is like, the TKZ fight for Volk, or, this is the Vettori fight for Adesanya. No. This is an amazing title defense, or an amazing win in general. Fuck title defense, fuck the title. It's just a good win in general. So this would boost his resume up a lot, okay? Especially because it's a dangerous fight. So again, a lot of us are rejoicing. We're saying, oh, Volk's getting the belt back, but it is a dangerous fight, a very dangerous fight. And I don't know if people should be so confident. I don't know if people should have the mentality of, bet the house on Volk. Don't do that because, again, things could go very wrong. He gets clipped with one punch and the entire fight could be over. So, yeah. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Until next time. What is up, guys? It's Lucas Tracy MMA here, and I want to let you guys know that I have something for you, and that's a real food cookbook. I don't know if you think you're DC or something, but most people usually don't perform at their best when they're walking around with 30% body fat. So if you're trying to lean out and you still want to eat good, tasty comfort foods, well, you could check out my real food cookbook because I've made it a purpose to have good, tasty foods that you can still eat just without all the processed bullshit, without all the processed ingredients like soy and seed oils. So guys, check out the Real Food Cookbook. Use code MMA for 30% off. The link is in my description. Don't forget that discount.